So here we are in the media page, and we've imported a couple different scenes, our car scene and our hotel scene. And if we go back to media storage, we still have quite a bit of footage to import into the project. And again, what we do is import all of it, throw it into the media pool, select the different scenes like this, and tag them all with the scene number based on the storyboard, and probably add a couple keywords to help us get organized. But it all basically works the same way. Select the scene, add whatever metadata is common to all of the shots, and then go through each shot and add the shot number based on what it looks like from the storyboard. So again, I'm not going to make you watch me do all of that because frankly, I've already done it, and we're going to open up a nicely organized project here in a minute. But I do want you to learn how to do this. And again, something that goes along with this metadata is actually going to be syncing our audio. So let's take a look at the edit page and get a little bit more familiar with that. And then we're going to look at how to link our recorded audio, our nice audio that isn't just the on-camera audio, with all of our shots. So I'm going to click on the edit page, this button down below, to switch to the edit page. And now again, we have some familiar panels here that we already know from the media page. We have our media pool. We even have a metadata panel here. We have a viewer on the left, which just lets us preview things before we add it to the timeline. And then we have our timeline down below. This is where we actually add things to a sequence and build our story. And then we have the timeline viewer, which is on the right, and that shows what our movie is actually going to look like. So if I grab a piece of media and drag it down to the timeline, this is my entire movie. If I were to save this out right now, this is what the whole movie looks like. Of course, we don't want that because there's people walking through the foreground. It's not edited. Obviously, there's no story, but we could certainly render it if we wanted to. I'll just delete that for now. So like I said, normally we could just start editing and throwing things into the timeline, finding whatever shot we want to start with first. So if it's maybe this first shot, and put that into our timeline and kind of start building a story here, right? So we have our phone shot, and we could kind of put this in sequence. And there's nothing really wrong with that other than we don't have our audio synced yet. And so right now, this audio,
and
it just doesn't sound very good. It's a little bit hard to tell on this clip, but it's pretty thin. You can hear a lot of the room. There's kind of a weird whiny sound.
okay, let's reset.
And for most of these shots, we recorded actually some nice audio. So how do we sync up all of our production audio that was recorded with a different recorder to all of these shots? It seems like a nightmare, right? If you've ever synced audio, it usually involves something like throwing these clips in the timeline, finding the extra audio, and then zooming way in and moving something back and forth until it lines up. And then you have to keep them together for the rest of your project. We're going to do something a little bit fancier than that. The first thing we need to do is actually import our audio. So again, I could right click anywhere in our media pool, and let's go to import media. Here in our work files under production audio, these are organized a little bit, and I want this hotel audio right here. So I'll just grab all of the audio inside of this hotel audio folder and hit open. That's going to bring in all of our audio like this. And we're going to do kind of a hybrid of how you would traditionally sync audio like this and also using some new tools. So the first thing I want to do is in our media pool, I want to make sure that we're sorting this right. Up here with this little down arrow icon, make sure that we're sorting by clip name. If we aren't sorting by clip name, this will just be a lot harder because the clips are named in order for both the audio and the video. And whatever order these are in the media pool, whatever order I select this in, is going to be the order that they're thrown into the timeline with. So I'm going to grab this, grab the first clip, and drag this down. And these should come down into the timeline in order. So now we have the very first thing that we shot all the way to the last thing that we shot. Now, if I scroll up to our audio and I do the same thing, select the first one, shift select the last one, and drag this down to the next layer, look at this. We have all of our audio, and it's roughly lined up with at least which clip it kind of syncs to. So we can kind of move these down a little bit to give them some space. I'm just marquee selecting both of these clips, grabbing with the middle button on my mouse, that's the scroll wheel button, to move back and forth like this, and just marquee selecting and giving a little bit of room here. The reason I'm doing this is just so that we have room to kind of slide these back and forth if we need to. Just making a little bit of room. One shortcut is Alt-Y, and that will select everything to the right of the playhead like this, so I can move it all down at once. And I'm just kind of trying to find the clips that are about the same size. Like this is about the same length as this clip, this is about the same length, and generally in order, right? So this clip right here is going to go to one of these, but I'm not sure which one, so I'll just leave it in between for now. And really the point of this is to just figure out which clip belongs to which piece of audio. It looks like these all line up, so I'm not sure which one this goes to. It seems like these are about right. And this part's kind of tedious, you know? And again, this doesn't come across as like super slick or anything, because honestly, in the real world, it's not really slick. Things don't always sync up perfectly. You have to do stuff like this in order to actually get your project working. Now that we have these kind of generally grouped to where we think that they live, one thing that we could do is zoom in on each clip. I'll grab this little divider thing here in our audio tracks and bring this down so that we can see our waveform. We could zoom way in and line up this slate. That's this little spike right here. That's from the slate. And see if it echoes or not. Because if it echoes, that means it's out of sync. And if it doesn't, that means it's synced well. So let's play it back.
Just kidding, it's a gun. It's a gun.
All right, that sounds good. So this piece of audio is synced to our video in the timeline. Now that's really cool, except for we would have to always keep these things together, which there are ways to do, right? So I can select both of these and right click and say link clips. And now anytime that I grab these, they will always be together, right? They're like friends. They're like friendship. And that works. And I've done a lot of projects that way. And honestly, worst case scenario, this is what you would do. But we're not going to quite do it this way. We're going to kind of do half of this work and then use metadata to help us sync a bunch of audio and make it a little bit easier to deal with later. And here's the general idea. Instead of syncing these up perfectly, I'm going to unlink these clips. What we can do is select this video clip and go up to our metadata here in our edit page. Make sure that we have shot and scene selected from the little menu over here. And we can scroll down and look at our shot. This one we called X3. So we can actually just tag our audio the exact same way as our video. So we know that this audio belongs to this clip. This clip is scene 1 shot X3. So I can select this audio and say scene 1 shot X3. Now that doesn't do anything magic by itself, but let me show you the magic part. This is why we're doing all this work. This clip is clip 22 in our media pool. And if we go up to our media pool here, we'll switch to list view and I'll close our little bin list here. And this will show us all kinds of different information about our clips. It kind of lists out the metadata here horizontally. And one of the things that you can show, if you right click up here on one of these headers, is you can tell it to show scene and shot and take. And now we have a little section here for scene. And of course it just adds it wherever it freaking wants. So shot and take are way over here, but we can reorganize this by dragging these over. Again, not very slick, is it? I hope this gives you a little bit of confidence, because what we found is that people sometimes have a hard time with their own projects after watching a tutorial. And they say, why isn't it as easy as it is in the tutorials? Well, that's because it just isn't always easy, right? So we have this audio as scene 1 shot X3. And we can organize this by scene or shot. And we can scroll down. Look at this. We have the audio and the video right next to each other here in the media pool. Shot 1 X3, shot 1, X3. And here's where it gets crazy. I can select both of these pieces of media right here and just shift select both of them, right click, and go up to Auto Sync Audio based on waveform. And it'll think about it for a second. And now it looks like nothing has happened. But if we take this clip and we scroll to the right, there is a section called Synced Audio. And look at this. It has synced this audio with this video. Now, let's look at the difference. I'll make a little bit of room here. If we were to drag this into the timeline now, look what happens. This audio is stuck to the video. So we don't have the bad on-camera audio before, it's just using the good audio. This might seem like a lot of work, going through and adding everything to the timeline and making sure the right clip is with the right piece of audio, right? And then adjusting the metadata. This is shot 6, scene 1, shot 6, scene 1, and everything. But now, if we can go up to the audio and the video, select both of them, right click, auto sync audio based on waveform, bloop. We have, again, that good audio stuck to the video. If we can do this work right now and prepare things, then we don't have to mess with it, at least not as much, later. We can just kind of get everything organized, and then we can just focus on being creative. That's the really nice part about being organized like this, is you don't have to worry as much about where is that piece of audio, right? If we were to edit this without doing this, we would have to go through really awkwardly and find the audio that syncs up with the video later. And you could do that, because the good thing is we did slate. And so every time that we slate, we call out what the scene was that we shot with, right?
1E phone, take 1.
1E phone, take 1, right? So if we had this in our edit, right, we could open this up and say, okay, what's 1F bonus gun hotel? And go through and try and find the audio that links up with that, right?
Money, scene 1F bonus gub.
Gosh, I'm the worst. 1E phone, take 1.
So there we go. Then we could drag that down into our timeline, and we could do basically the same amount of work that we're already doing, but a lot later where it's a lot more awkward, basically. Here's another note on syncing audio as well. There are features in Resolve where, let's say I know that this audio syncs with this video. I can select both of these in the timeline and right click and go up to Auto Align Clips based on waveform. And look what happens. It will move those over to be in sync. And that is really, really helpful if you know that that clip lines up with this piece of audio. So it'll do a little bit of work for you there. And how I've done projects in the past quite a bit is you kind of lay out all of the footage in one timeline, and then you can go through and add markers. So you could do something like hit M on the keyboard, or you click this little button right here and hit M again. And you can open up this marker panel and call this, you know, shot, whatever shot this would be, right? Shot 5, and kind of organize it that way. And if that's what you're familiar with, or if you want to do it that way, that totally works. But every time that you want a new shot, you have to go over to the timeline and you have to search through your markers and all of that stuff. And it's just a little bit more awkward, but still a good way to do it. In that case, you would have kind of a backup timeline with all of the audio synced. And then you could go to whatever marker you're looking for. Okay, this is shot 5, and grab this and copy it and then paste it into whatever timeline you're using to edit. And for something like a documentary or an interview where you'd have a really long piece of media with a bunch of things that's happening within it instead of a bunch of little shots like this, that might actually be a better way to do it, because then you can kind of listen through and add notes throughout time and then just grab the things that you want to grab. But for something like this with a bunch of little shots, I think the way that we're doing it is a little bit better. And we're really going to see this make a big difference when we get into editing. So like I said, this is just one scene, and what you would have to do is open up every scene and throw it into the timeline in clip order, and then throw the audio in the timeline in clip order, and manually go through and figure out which clip lines up with which piece of audio, and select each clip and make sure that the metadata matches. So this is shot X2, scene 1, shot X2, scene 1. And then once you've done that for each scene, go up to the media pool, and shift select both of the clips that are next to each other, right click, auto sync audio, based on waveform and let it do its thing. The great news is that we already did all of this for you, so you don't have to go through and do all the boring things. We'll leave that for you to do on your own project. But this is the best way that we found at this moment to sync these things together in Resolve and have the audio sync to the video. There are ways like Pluralize to sync everything up in the timeline, but like I said, when we get into editing, we're going to realize why this is a nicer way to have things organized. We're going to realize why this is a better way to have the audio synced up. One final note before we go on. When we originally made the cut for this movie, what we did was we grabbed all of the media for one scene like this. We just shift selected all of it and right clicked somewhere and said auto sync audio based on waveform. And honestly, that does work. It will generally sync up all of the audio with all of the video, and it will do a pretty good job on most of the clips. But right now in this version of Resolve, there is an error where it adds like 50 tracks to each clip, and it causes a lot of problems later, which we didn't find out until like way down the timeline, until we were like ready to render. We didn't know it was a problem. So if you're wondering, if you've watched some of my YouTube videos, if you're wondering why we aren't doing that for this project, it's because for whatever reason, there's some bug in Resolve that does not like doing that. So I assume they'll fix that and things will be a lot easier and we won't really have to do this exact way in the future. But for now, if you're having trouble with that auto sync and you have a lot of clips, this is a great way to do it, kind of combining a few different ways to sync as well as using our metadata. Whew, that was a deep dive. Next, we're going to open up our nicely synced and organized project that you don't have to do all that work for, and we're going to jump into editing.